Great, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for organising this. It's lovely to read alongside other writers. And thank you for publishing the book. Sum 41 is an unexpected resonance, shall we say. So I'm going to read a couple of stories. 0 Hours is a collection of intersecting stories about different characters on 0 hour contracts. Draws on experience, but it is fiction. Waiting. Because the thing with these contracts is that some days you could call up the 4 different agencies you're registered with, and not one of them has a single shift for you. And you could call them up every day for weeks and get nothing, and then get loads of work, but all on the same day. And then you'd go with whichever shift paid most, and the other managers of the other agencies would get pissed off with you for being unavailable. So you might as well only be registered with one agency, because all of them basically just have work on at the weekends. And then you'd get 4 days in a row, all white shirt shifts till 3 a.m. And once you got home, it would be 3:30 a.m. and you'd have to wash and iron your white shirts for the next day and spray deodorant in your beer-soaked shoes. One of those 3:30 a.m. ironing sessions, you might look out of the window and see a barefoot woman running down the empty street. And you might be too tired to see if she was okay, because maybe you'd have another double shift in a few hours' time, so you just go straight to sleep on your sofa. In the morning, you might realise it was a black shirt you needed anyway, so you didn't even need to be awake ironing your white shirts so late. You might have slept longer and might not have seen the woman running down the street. On one of those days, when there wasn't any work going and you'd already called all the agencies twice and they'd all said there's never any shifts going in January, you might be at home watching TV, polishing your shoes, digging cotton buds in the ridges where the vomit sticks and dries. Maybe you'd have the news on and there'd be an expose set on your street, the very street you lived on, with the news presenters interviewing all the neighbours you don't know. Because who meets their neighbours when you work antisocial hours? But maybe the faces would be familiar, and then you could see inside people's homes where they'd be interviewed on their sofas. There were a lot of ugly sofas inside the houses on your street. Everyone sitting on those sofas would say how they had no idea anything was going on, and how the people in question had always seemed like such nice, normal people. There was always one person who got interviewed who had an inkling from the very first, and would draw out an anecdote in a way that would make things seem very suspicious and loaded with meaning. But suppose then that one of your managers called, and it had been days since your last shift. Well, you'd turn off the news, wouldn't you? And forget to take down the number of the helpline for anyone who'd seen or heard anything suspicious, and you wouldn't have time to report it. Once you finished your double shift and did all your ironing, there wouldn't be time to think about it anyway, because you'd be tired enough to fall asleep then and there on your sofa, which was a little bit less ugly than the rest of the sofas on your street. And then this one is called Checkout. Sometimes Deirdre would say hello without looking at the customer until she had checked out 3 items and guessed, based on those items, what the person would be like. At first, she was quite confident in her guesses. Avocado, rye bread, oat milk, hipster. Tea, milk, bread, someone normal like her. Spaghetti hoops, white sliced bread, own brand butter, someone down on their luck. Pot noodle, gravy, vodka, student. Coke, crisps, chocolate, school child. Tampon, rosé, painkillers, young woman. Buckfast, beer, burgers, a young man. Rice, noodles, soy sauce, international student. When she spoke to her son, Duncan, after he got back from work at the hotel, she told him her trio of things and asked him to guess who'd bought them. He would laugh if it was a stereotype of a student or a hipster, and would be embarrassed if it was someone down on their luck or foreign. He would tell her, "Punch up, not down, Ma." But soon she realised, not because of Duncan, but because of the unpredictability of people's purchases, that her game didn't work. The local lads drank rosé, the students ate crumpets, the hipsters liked spaghetti hoops, and the international students bought Buckfast. People's baskets and trolleys overflowed with the most random combinations. She was forced to change her game. The new game was to see who spent more money, men or women. But often men and women shopped together and paid together. Then it became who drank more alcohol, but that was rather depressing because it turned out that once you start counting units, a lot of people drink a lot more alcohol than is good for them. Same went for fizzy drinks and sweets. Then it was who had the worst period. Did they buy tampons with chocolate, wine, painkillers, or gin? Then it was who spent the most money. Then it was who spent the least. Then management introduced a new game. Who could work fastest? The winner got a free bottle of red, the runners-up got nothing, and the slowest people lost their jobs. Only management didn't tell them about the last bit, and if Deirdre had complained about it, they would have said it was nothing to do with the game. People were losing their jobs because they were being replaced by technology. You only needed one member of staff per 8 self-service checkout machines. Deirdre knew that the game and technology were connected. She eyed the competition. Only 2 people were older than her, Edith and Alistair. Edith was very old. She claimed she had driven ambulances in the war and then fire engines in London. She'd lost her job when her eyesight became too bad for driving and moved back up to Scotland. Her glasses were thick as the base of a whiskey tumbler. Edith took the competition, because she knew it wasn't a game, very seriously. She would start ringing through the next customer's purchase before the first customer had put their wallet away. She would have spare till roll waiting by the machine, just in case it ran out. In quiet spells, she would restock on plastic bags, change the till rolls even if they hadn't run out, and push all the dividers that people put on the conveyor belt within easy customer reach. She always seemed to have more dividers and more plastic bags than anyone else. Alistair was about Deirdre's age. He'd been a stay-at-home father and never qualified to do anything else. His wife was rich, ran a betting shop. Their children were grown up now, older than hers. Alistair didn't like the game, but he played as well as he could. The trouble was, he was always asking people how their day was. And sometimes they would stand there chatting until the customers in the queue behind complained. Then sometimes an argument would start and it would take ages before anyone left. Alistair's till always had the longest queue, the sort you'd avoid. The rest of the team were younger than Deirdre. Some were students, some were foreigners, the rest were mothers whose children were either in school or grown up. Some of them were chatty, but all of them were faster than she was, and she couldn't blame it on age. Edith won the game. Nobody was surprised. She took home a bottle of Chateauneuf-du-Pape. About a month later, when the management thought everyone had forgotten about the game, they started letting the slowest people go. Millie, who never stopped talking. Marie, whose English wasn't very good. Dirk, who spent most of his time stocking shelves and avoiding the tills. Alistair, who went back to being a house husband. And Deirdre. Let go. As though management had been clinging on to them while they begged for release. Why couldn't they just say fired like they used to? Redundant. That was even worse, as though she had nothing of value to offer them whatsoever. But the worst thing was that she still had to shop there, because it was the only supermarket near her house and she wasn't going to spend money on a bus to the second closest supermarket on Point of Pride. A few weeks later, she joined the agency Duncan was working for and got a cleaning job, doing hotels and offices as and when, wherever she was needed. The pay was minimum wage, but combined with her pension, it was enough to start a new game. So she did. She would go and buy only 2 items at a time and pick Edith's queue, or any of the supervisor's tills, depending on what mood she was in. She never used the self-service checkout machines. Then she would buy her paired items and watch their faces closely for a reaction. The more offensive, the better. The more embarrassed they were, the more satisfied she would feel. Afterwards, she'd call up Duncan and tell him of her latest purchase and how shocked the supervisors were. If it was anything morbid, he laughed. If it was sexual, he'd groan with embarrassment. If it was racist, he'd remind her, "Punch up, not down, Ma." Baby food and vodka. Dog food and rat poison. Toilet paper and antidiuretics. Sleeping tablets and razor blades. Condoms and pineapple juice. Bleach and lettuce. A pregnancy test and a single coat hanger. Thank you.